Hey, how you been? Hey, I'm good. How's your week been? Yeah, I'm good myself. That's good. That's good to hear that you had fun. That's good to hear. How was the soccer game you said you had over the weekend? Oh, y'all won. Oh, that's amazing to hear. Congrats. Congrats. I hope that there was time in between the soccer practices to touch up on last week's sessions. Nah, it's understandable. But yeah, glad to know you at least covered that. So any questions from last week's content? Yeah. Okay, no, that's fair. That's fair. No, because it's understandable. We kind of covered a lot of content in such a short time frame, and anyone would have a few doubts with them. So don't worry, it's pretty normal. So how about we just touch up on last week's session, and then we'll move on to this week's one. Yeah. All right. So just to remind you, last week we did the blood vessels, right? So this week we shall be doing the heart. Right? So let's just go back to the blood vessels and we'll just run through, I think, the more important aspects to it, what I feel like would be asked in the exam. Right? Share screen. Right. Are you able to see my screen? Yeah, all good. All right. All right. So are we ready to start? Yeah, all good. Beautiful. So yeah, so last week we discussed basically the blood vessels and the three main types of blood vessels. You remember the arteries, veins, capillaries. Yeah. So I think the main question that you would be main question that they might ask would be the differences between the three. So could you just run through with me a couple of differences off the top of your mind? What comes to your mind when you think of artery, capillary, vein in terms of the differences? Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. That's a good point. All right. No, that's fine. That's three differences, which is I guess more than about what the mark scheme would expect you to be giving, right? I don't see a mark scheme needing you to list any more than three, so three is good, right? Three is solid. Um, but if what I would say is just learn one extra, just to be safe. The one thing you might want to add is the fact that arteries and capillaries are valveless, whereas veins do have valves, right? So to prevent the backflow of blood. And that's a very small thing, right? It's a very small thing to remember. And if you can incorporate that, it'll be lovely, right? So that would be ideal. Um, and then yeah, pretty straightforward, right? You have the thickness of the cell walls, the content it carries, the pressure it carries, and then even in the cell wall thickness, even those things change, right? So that's the important aspect to remember. And again, I won't don't stress too much exactly on the the ratios of the components, right? Like elastic fibers to smooth cells to collagen. You're not really expected to know like what the exact ratios are. So don't stress too much about it. This is just for you to get a rough idea as to what is mainly made up in these ones. Right. So as you can see in the aorta, it's mainly elastic fibers, and that is because it needs to hold the larger pressure. Imagine the blood that comes right out of the lungs, heart. That blood is at the highest possible pressure it is in the entire body. So obviously it needs to have some sort of stretch in order to, you know, get that uh, to in order to accommodate that pressure, not rupture. And this has been done 24/7, 365 for 80, 90, 100 years of your life. So it has to be durable. It's not just like some sort of piping you might have at home. Yeah. Yeah. So do you have any questions with regards to that? No. All right. So I guess that's really the main thing with regards to the three types of veins. So as long as you understand that concept and its functions, right? So arteries are to take blood away, veins are to bring blood back, and then capillaries are for exchange, right? So you clearly mentioned that, and honestly, that is if you can understand that concept, you'll be fine. Yeah. So that's good to know that you've been able to revise in between your soccer practices. Yeah, that's great. All right. So then we're going to touch upon today's subject, right, which is going to be the heart. So the mammalian heart, the reason why it says mammalian heart is because different organisms have different hearts, right? So for example, fish would have two hearts, a valve with two chambers, right? Whereas us, we have a valve with four chambers. So in this topic, we'll mainly just be covering the anatomical structure of the heart, and then later on we might be discussing a bit more about what could go wrong in blood vessels that could in fact affect the heart. So for example, the heart attack, right? We might dive a little bit deeper into that to get a proper understanding, right? So we have to discuss the heart and its main blood vessels that come out and give feed into the blood, right? So your vena cavas, your aortas, pulmonary artery, pulmonary vein. We'll discuss a little bit more about that. The actual chambers of the aorta of the heart, and then finally a bit more about what could go wrong. Right? Does that make sense? Right? Can I start? All right. So pretty much, if it's the structure of the heart, I know in your love letters or ethics, in like in movies, heart is given this little heart shape, right? But the heart couldn't be further from that, right? It's really just like an oblong foot, like American football, right? It's really is a weird shape, right? And it's not like perfectly pointed down. It's actually towards an angle. It's at an angle, right? So that is one thing that we kind of have to you know, train our mind for. So our heart is basically with four chambers, right? You have two atria and two ventricles, and the left and right sides are separated by a muscle, a very thick muscle called a septum, right? As you can see here, this is your septum, right? It's a very thick muscular wall, and it's thicker in the ventricular region. Any idea why, compared to the aorta, it's thicker in the ventricle? See, if you look at this, I just cut this like blind. I can cut this in half, right? Consider this top part the atria, and the bottom part the ventricles. Now look at the thickness of this here compared to the thickness here. Why do you think the atria is thinner than the ventricles? Exactly. That is exactly why. As you can see, atria's real job is not really to pump blood at a high pressure or even at high volumes. Its entire job is just to get the blood from A to B, right? Just need to get the blood from there to there. You don't need a lot of pressure for that. And because there's not a lot of pressure here, the septum doesn't really have to be that thick because it's not dealing with a lot of pressures. But like as you said, in the ventricles, they are now dealing with a lot more pressure, right? Left side is pumping to which aspects of the body? Right, the entire body, and the right side will be to the lungs. Exactly. So because they are actually pumping blood outside the heart, it would need to deal with a lot more pressure. And to be more specific, it's actually to do with the left side. The right side pressure is not that much because it's to the lungs, and the lungs are right there. Lungs have really got capillaries. You don't need that much pressure. And really, this muscular wall is its thickness is really for the left side ventricle. And it is more obvious when you look at the right side wall and the left side wall. Can you see the difference there as well? Right. So you can imagine how much more pressure is on the left side compared to the right side. Does that make sense? Right. So that thickness is something that you have to keep note of, and that's the reason why I can just take a look at a cross section of a heart and know which is right and left simply by looking at the thickness. Right? So it's very straightforward. Yeah. Do you have any questions? Right. That's good. All right. Right. So the heart fibers, it's called the cardiac muscle. That's what the heart is made of, right? And it gets its blood, it gets its oxygen, gets its glucose from what type of blood vessels? What do you call those blood vessels that bring in the blood to the heart and also take it away, right? The coronary vessels, exactly. So you have the coronary artery and the coronary vein. Please do not confuse these vessels with your aorta vena cava. They are two completely different things, right? Aorta and vena cava, they don't supply the heart. They feed the heart's chambers so the heart can pump the blood. Whereas the coronary vessels, the coronary artery and the coronary vein, their job is to circulate the blood through the muscle of the heart, right? Actually give the heart oxygen and glucose. But why would the heart need oxygen and glucose? That's why. It's for respiration, right? For aerobic respiration. So I just need you to incorporate those kinds of keywords, right? It's not just respiration, it's aerobic respiration, right? This is the key phrase here. Because what do you think happens when you switch from aerobic to what's the opposite one? Anaerobic, right? So what happens when you switch from aerobic to anaerobic in terms of like a heart muscle? Mm, I get where you're coming from, and I guess that's a good approach to it. Yes, your calves do cramp, but a heart cramp, um, how would that really translate? Think a bit deeper. What exactly is a cramp? Yeah, it's like your heart stopped, right? So then what do you think? that would in the real world, what have you heard regarding the heart topic? Heart attack, right? So in a heart attack, pretty much what's happening is you cut the supply of blood and you switch from aerobic to anaerobic, and eventually the heart muscle dies because it cannot sustain anaerobic respiration for long. And this is a muscle that's working all the time, right? Beat, 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 beat. So it has to have a good supply of oxygen and glucose, and also have a good supply of blood out to take away all the metabolites, or basically things that are byproducts of respiration, things that the heart doesn't want. It's like, yeah, I'm done with respiration, please take this away. So you need a good vessel, vein supply as well to take the, I would say, dirty blood. Right? Does that make sense? Yeah. Any questions? Okay. But again, feel free to just stop me at any point. Yeah, I'd rather we clear the doubts and then move on than you have to just think about it in the back of your mind, right? Mhm. Just checking. Okay. So I mean, the flow of blood in the heart is pretty straightforward, right? Blood comes in through the vena cava, and as you can see here, there's two vena cavas, right? You have your superior and your inferior vena cava. Just thinking about the anatomical location of these, right? Where do you think superior vena cava brings blood from? Exactly, your head, right? On top of that, you'll also want to include the limbs. Right? The limbs also bring in blood from the superior vena cava. Yeah, but good. So it's bringing blood from the top. And then inferior vena cava, precisely, right? It's from the rest of the body. If anything below the heart, it'll bring blood from. Right? So the superior and inferior vena cava, which drain in and just form the vena cava. And that drains into the, so superior and inferior vena cava drains into the right atrium. Right? And that is this. That's your right atrium. Right? The right atrium, what does it do? It sends the blood to the right ventricle. Right? And it passes a certain valve here. Right? What do you think is the point of heart valves? Yeah, pretty much, right? Prevent backflow. Same as the vein valves, right? Prevent backflow. Right? What like we learned last week about veins. Same concept here. You don't want the blood to backflow. So basically, what's going to happen is when this heart contracts, when this part of the heart contracts, right? You want the blood to flow this way and not this way, right? So when you pump blood this way, right, it's going this way. It's going to actually shut this valve. So the flow of blood will shut it. So it's not like extra energy is required. The flow, the blood that is pumped will shut it. And then the remaining blood just gets diverted this way. And what do you think this vessel is called? Precisely. Precisely, right? That is your pulmonary artery. See, now the special thing, this is a bit extra. I don't think they really expect you to know this. I don't think they'll test you on it, right? That's what I'm trying to say. This is the only artery that carries deoxygenated blood. Can you see it in blue? Right? Normally, when you think of blue, what do you think? Vein, right? Inferior vena cava, superior vena cava, they're all veins. But this is the only artery that carries deoxygenated blood. Right? So it's pretty interesting thing. This is just for your knowledge. It's not really get this, it's for your knowledge. Then it goes to the lung. There's its gas exchange. Oxygen comes in, carbon dioxide goes out, and the blood comes back in. Right? Now, when the blood comes back in, it comes in through what? Pulmonary vein, exactly. Right? Pulmonary vein. Now, because how many lungs do I have? Two. So because I have two lungs, so right lung, left lung, I will equally have a right pulmonary artery, right pulmonary vein, left pulmonary artery, left pulmonary vein. So I'll have an artery and a vein for each lung, right? And if you learn about this later on when you eventually enter med school, that the artery would subdivide, right, for each lobe, and then again further divide, and then eventually become capillaries that go around the alveoli, which we can discuss later. But that's just a general gist for you. Yeah? So the left and right pulmonary veins, they come together and they feed into what? The left atrium. Exactly. Right? So the left atrium, it feeds blood straight to the left ventricle. Left ventricle contracts, pumps blood out of the right. That will be your aorta. Right? That'll be your aorta. Sorry, right here. Now this portion to it, what do you think that's called? Because the aorta is really just this from here. Let me just change the color for you. It really is from here up until here is considered the aorta. right? Or the ascending aorta. Right? Again, bit extra, but I'm just telling you. So what do you think this curvy part is? That's the arch of the aorta, right? Again, this is a bit of extra information, I think, but it's nice to know, right? Just so you get like a complete understand. Don't worry if you don't know it. Again, this is the first time we are covering it. Your school hasn't even come to this point yet, so don't worry. It's all good. So this is your arch of aorta, right? It's the curvy part. And then what's the part that's going to be down? If this is ascending, this is going to be descending. Exactly. That's your descending aorta. Right? So could you let's have a quick look at it. Okay, I'm just gonna put it on the screen for a little longer. Just have a quick look through this. Right? Just follow the path, right? And then I'm gonna turn off this. I'm gonna stop showing you the model, and I need you to trace me the pathways of the blood. Right? I need to know not only the path, but what are the alternative routes that it can take. Right? Okay. I'll give you a couple of seconds to have a look at it and go. Mhm. All right. That's good. That's really great, right? So you just learned it. This is something you just picked up. And I think that was a really good first attempt, right? Honestly, you pretty much got all the important bits. All the important bits. The only thing I just wanted to add is that there's a superior and inferior vena cava. That's literally all, right? Besides that, you got pretty much got everything on the atrial ventricles of both sides, the left and right pulmonary artery, the left and right pulmonary vein, ascending aorta, arch of aorta. Again, it's not curvy aorta, it's arch of aorta, and then descending aorta. That's pretty spot on, right? That's really great. And this is your first time learning it. You just saw a model for 5 minutes, and now you're already giving, like, you're already answering the questions well. That's good. That's good. That's really good. I'm really happy to see that. Right. All right. So we just trace the pathways of the blood. Now, just before we move on, we just have to learn one more thing with regards to the heart. It's the different types of valves. So you have your semilunar valves up top, and these semilunar valves are gonna be preventing backflow from the pulmonary artery or the pulmonary vein back to its relevant ventricle. So in this case, let me just erase this mark. So in this case, this semilunar valve will be preventing backflow from the pulmonary artery back to the right ventricle. If there's another semilunar valve here, this is kind of covered, but that will prevent blood from the aorta back to the left ventricle. That's called semilunar valve. Then you have your tricuspid and bicuspid valves. Right? The names tri and bicuspid are referring to the number of little flaps that they have. Right? So bicuspid obviously is two, tri is three. So those are two valves that again prevent backflow from ventricle to atrium. Okay. I guess that's pretty much the most important content with regards to this heart lecture. So I'm happy to see that you've pretty much nailed it. Mm-hmm. Right. So to recap, in this session, we kind of discussed the structures of the heart, right? We discussed all the relevant major blood vessels bringing in blood. We discussed the valves in the heart, and we discussed the chambers of the heart, right? So septum and its relevant four chambers. Then we discussed a little bit about the systole, right? So whether the heart contracts and the heart doesn't, things like that, right? So this is one that pretty much sums up this this module, right? It's this chapter. So it's a pretty interesting chapter. I don't know about you, but I tend to like the heart. Yeah, I know heart's a lot better, right? Trust me, you're not gonna like it when we start doing botany. God, yeah, that's a snooze fest. So this is a lot more interesting. I mean, it was about our body, right? Things that happen inside us. So it's a lot more fun. So yeah, so just to recap, that's what we did, right? So I just need you to go through this again before next week's class. Okay, it's not too much, right? It's a bit more simple compared to the blood vessel lecture. So you go through it, just look at the different aspects of the heart, and this diagram you basically have to memorize, right? You must know this like the back of your head. You have to be able to figure out how the blood is flowing, what is what, because they could pretty much just give you this diagram and ask you to label it, and then you have to be able to label it, right? It's a very stock standard diagram. Yeah. So for next week's session, we're going to be discussing atherosclerosis. So this is that problem I told you that you can occur if you it is a problem you can have that can occur in your blood vessels that eventually would cause a heart attack. Yeah. This is what we'll be discussing next week. So yeah, that's actually quite interesting. So look forward to that. Alrighty. Do you have any other questions or concerns? Yeah. Yeah. Well, what's in plan for this coming week? Anything interesting? Anything new? What's the goss? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Already. Oh, that sounds fun. Yeah. Oh no, I really don't have much planned for this week. But for me, always something just comes out of nowhere. Impromptu plans always just pop up. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, that sounds great. That sounds fun. Yeah. Let me know how it goes next week. Yeah. Sounds good. So any other questions or concerns about today's class before we wrap it up? No. Okay. Well, that's good to hear. All right, then I will see you next week. You you take care till then. Yeah. All right. Yes, buddy.